call this meeting to order at 3:07 p.m. May we have roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Gish. Aurora Black.
Here.
Kendra Garcia.
Here.
Chair Gish.
Here.
Pam Parfit.
She's excused.
Angelique Montoya Chavez.
Present.
Miriam Jahar.
She's excused.
Eli Fresquez.
Here.
Chris Pommier.
She's excused.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Next is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes or amendments to the agenda? No? Okay. If there are no changes to the agenda, may we approve the agenda as is?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion to approve the agenda. Aurora Black.
Oh, yes.
Kendra Garcia.
Yes.
Kathleen Gish.
Yes.
Angelique Montoya Chavez.
Yes.
Eli Fresquez.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is approval of the minutes, and I know, Aurora, you sent a list of the amendments to the transcript. Do you want to go ahead and read those?
Okay. On page 9, paragraph 5, line 1, there's something 100 words or more. I think that I couldn't figure out what it is. Page 10, paragraph 5, Don Miller is the speaker. Same page, paragraph 11, Aurora is the speaker. Page 11, paragraph 11, it should read Eli and Kendra and Kathleen, Kathlyne. And on page 12, paragraph 17, it should be a few amendments. On page 23, paragraph 3, line 3, it should say and elderly as opposed to and early. Okay, page 24, paragraph 7. I don't know the correct spelling of the woman who is the loop expert. And so perhaps if somebody who knows that could provide it, I'd like to have her name spelled correctly. It was phonetically spelled as Ramey. Okay, and on page 31, paragraph 3, line 10, they're referring to Counselor Romero, Romero -Worth, WIRTH. Page 36, paragraph 3, line 2, it should be Kathleen, KATHLYNE, as and not Catherine. On page 39, paragraph 6, line 2, it should say participating, not partying. Page 40, line 5, paragraph 5, line 2. It says accompanist, it should say accomplishment list. Page 41, paragraph 8, line 5. They're referring to a restaurant that is Jinja, JINJA, not Ginga. Page 42, paragraph 3, the speaker is Aurora. That's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any other amendments to the transcript? Or Gina Maria, go ahead.
I have one, but I don't know the page number.
Yeah.
It's where I'm speaking at the bottom of one page, the next page it says, and I said, I don't know where the unfortunately is. You got it because I organized it. Since I didn't speak very much, it will probably be easy to find.
I'll see if I can find that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, are there any other changes or amendments to the minutes for clarity or accuracy? No. If there are no other amendments, may we have approval of the minutes and transcript as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, and I just want to go on record too to really thank Aurora for all her work going through those transcripts. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, vote on the motion to approve the minutes as amended. Aurora Black,
Yes.
Kendra Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Gish,
Yes.
Angelique Montoya Chavez,
Yes.
Eli Fresquez.
Yes,
Motion to approve the minutes as amended is
Thank you.
approved.
Thank you. Are there any public comments or any comments on behalf of someone who can't attend? Gina Maria? You're on mute.
All right. Is it possible to get page numbers on the minutes?
Maybe. We can look into that. I can find out. I know that sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. It depends on the type of document that it is, but I can look into that.
All right, I could help maybe.
Okay. Any other public comments? No, okay. Next is presentations. Discussion and information on Disability Employment Awareness Month in the nation and city of Santa Fe. And this is a discussion by myself, Kathleen Gish, Eli Fresquez, Bernadette Salazar, Human Resources Director. And I don't know, Regina said that Layla was supposed to be here, but I haven't gotten any sort of feedback at all. So, so if we could clarify who is here, that would be really helpful.
Yes, Chair Gish, we have our Human Resources Director, Bernadette Salazar, and also another staff member from the Human Resources Department, Christina Arnal.
Welcome and thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having
And also Chair Gish, sorry, Bern. Regina's running about half an hour late.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for that information. So Eli, I know we had been discussing what to share for the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. I don't know if you want to start and then I can kind of fill in with what I have provided in the handouts.
yeah, I mean, I'll just give a general background. I think the EEOC and the Department of Labor are two just really great places to find lots of information. That's a good starting place. Also, the ADA National Network is also another great resource. So Department of Labor, EEOC, ADA National Network, can't go wrong kind of starting there. And I just really want to appreciate the city for being here. It's really important. I think some of the pillars of October and disability awareness is awareness and education. So it's reaching out to HR managers. It's reaching out to candidates, employees, other employers about the disability community, dispelling myths, stereotypes. What do promotion of inclusive workforce look like? Also, I think what's really important is some of the tools that they have available from the Department of Labor, in particular in the EEOC, about how to create an atmosphere of employment that is inclusive and includes accommodations. What are reasonable accommodations? How do you have that interactive process with employees in order for them to feel part of the workforce, but also how to be really great at their jobs, and how do we make for a better workforce in general. There's been lots of studies out there that have found that when you have a diverse and inclusive workforce, including people with disabilities, you're much more productive, and you're much better at getting the job done. So all those pillars, you know, and again, EEOC, Department of Labor, ADA National Network, those are all good places to start. And just want to thank the city for even being here. It's really hard. I know it's hard to find people. I know a lot of our platforms are have opportunities to be more accessible on the state side as well. You know, I've worked with the state personnel office, and we're actually doing some work on the state side to improve accessibility, but it's hard for everyone. But starting with awareness is really, really important, and having those people in city and state government who work in the HR fields is really great. So that's what I got for, I can go in more detail, but that's kind of like the opening for this. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eli. So I meant to screen share this, but I don't have it ready. So this is the flyer for this month from the for National Disability Employment Awareness Month and from the Office of Disability Employment Policy. And the theme is advancing access and equity, which I think is an incredibly important theme. And they're also celebrating the 50th year of the Rehabilitation Act. And so two things are combining right now, which are very exciting. And I see, Helena, that you have your hand up, so go ahead.
Yes, sorry. I just got a chat, or I was looking at the chat. The captioner is asking that if the participants can put their first name rather than initials so that she can type who's speaking. And we have Daniel Lopez who just joined, and Regina probably won't be as late. She said she's trying to get on. Thank you.
Thank you. So, all right, so I will continue. So in the handouts that I included, and there was more that I wanted to include, but I didn't have time to gather it all. I can gather it and send it separately if needed, but I just wanted to go over some of the history of disability employment, the statistics currently, as well as solutions. And then I do have a couple of questions for the city staff on current practices. So part of why this is important to me is that I did go through the process of submitting an application to test the city portal. And I found that my information kept erasing, even though I kept trying to save it, and it repeatedly erased. I don't know if it was a browser issue, or I have no idea what was going on, but it just continued to erase, or it would erase part of it. And so if I didn't notice that the part that erased, I wouldn't have known, and I would have submitted things I intended to submit would have not been submitted. And so I noticed that, and Eli was the person who sent me to it, was that the state website is much more thorough and clear on the process. And I think that if I had some kind of a guideline like that, where it outlines what to expect, what to do, how to edit things, what to look out for to make sure that, everything was in place. If I had the ability to skip ahead for information to see what was everything that was required to upload, to have it ready, rather than like scrambling to go scan it before it erased again, things that I was trying to do just to submit that application. And I had to do it all in one setting, because every time I saved it and went back to it, there was things that were erased. And so it was just really frustrating. And it would have been frustrating to anybody, not just me having a visual disability, but for anyone to experience that. And so, I see that there are ways that we can obviously improve the city. I'm sure that there's wonderful things that you're doing that I'm not aware of. So that's kind of what I wanted to have this discussion back and forth of what we're doing and then how to improve things that need to be improved. So the national statistics vary greatly because of depending on the questions asked or the population asked. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics is pretty consistent in their findings. And they are finding that the current employment rate for people with disabilities in the United States is 21.3% compared to 65.4% who don't have a disability, which is a huge difference between the two populations. Of course, you know, we know that people with disabilities have needs, like they may need Medicaid, so they may not be able to work because they might lose their Medicaid, or they fear that they might lose their Medicaid. They might not be able to work due to their disabilities. There's all kinds of reasons. But the reality is that the employment of people with disabilities is very low, and that there are ways that we can increase that percentage by increasing the culture and physical access and all kinds of resources available for employees with disabilities that aren't being done just across the board, across the entire nation, not necessarily, you know, for the city, but just overall. And so another thing is that in 2022, 30% of workers with a disability were employed part-time, compared with 16% with for those with no disability. And employed persons with a disability were more likely to be self-employed than those with no disability. And that goes back again to the culture of employment, workplaces, ableism within the workplace, you know, lack of flexibility that might exist, things like that. So I don't want to like go into incredible detail, but I think that's a decent overview. I don't know if you have anything to add, Eli.
Yeah, that's an awesome overview. Just to contextualize this a little bit too, is employment in our current economy and capitalism and our society is really important. It's foundational to access to education or access to health insurance. It's often a place for people to develop relationships that they may not have when they're at home and not able to interact with the community. So through employment and through coworkers. Also, there's a lot of identity and self-worth that can be attained by having part-time or full-time work. And also, like we'd mentioned, the contributions that people produce to the community and also the broader economy is really important. And because of stereotypes, lack of access, many of the things that Kathleen was describing, it's kind of an untapped resource. And I know when I was in New York City, there was a number of different programs that were set up in order to work with private entities, public entities, employers, and bring them on board and teach them what accommodations were, dispel some of those employment myths in regard to the cost of reasonable accommodations, for example, are usually pretty de minimis. And so how to tap into a lot of talent, given that the unemployment rate is historically pretty low, and it has been for the last few years. There's a real opportunity to tap into the disability community and find a hidden workforce there and help support, again, both people with disabilities, but also the broader economy.
Thank you, Eli. So one of the questions that I had, and you don't necessarily have to answer this first. If you need a minute to think, just let me know, because I do have other things I can present. But one of my questions is, what is the process to receive accommodations currently within the city when you apply for a job? Because that is not online that I could find. And so that would have been helpful to know as well, to experience that process and have that back and forth communication rather than just having it like cut off basically. And so, yeah, so if you're able to answer that right now, let me know.
Yes. Madam Chair, if I can just give a little bit of background, if you
Yeah.
don't mind.
That's fine.
Again, thank you for having us here, both Christina Arnell, who is our recruitment specialist, and myself. The timing was actually kind of in sync with her assessment of our online application process. She actually did a test before I got the email from Regina inviting me to the meeting, and she identified some flaws in our system as well. So her analysis compared to yours were pretty much in sync. So I think that's a good thing because we are on a road to get those fixed. We recently went through a system upgrade a few months ago, and there's some things that we can do with our current version to open up some of these opportunities and make it definitely more user friendly, because we agree with a lot of the statements or questions that you had in the email that you sent. So I can address those. We also looked into the job accommodation network and the resources for employers and employees and how we can better meet the needs of our applicants. So we did add some language to start off as a starting point on our website, and they would essentially, the way it works now is if someone has a request, they would contact the human resources line or email specifically to HR team members, but we put that kind of at the forefront of the direction page. So hopefully that will be helpful. But your feedback is really good, and it's reminded me of all the work that we can do to make it easier. I think we do a really good job when employees are on board and they're requesting something. There's definitely we have practiced that a little bit more than with applicants, and so there's a pretty robust process for that. But I agree that with applicants we need to beef that up a little bit. But I'm really hopeful that with the improvements to our system, our computer system and our online platform, that we'll be able to accomplish that. And then continuing to look at our resources, as Mr. Frescas mentioned, the EEOC, Department of Labor, the ADA network, and then the Job Accommodation Network, that we can implement some things pretty quickly without a lot of additional expenses or resources, because it's all out there. So we have to answer in short order your question, we put the email address and the phone number that someone can call if they have a request for an accommodation.
Okay, that's great. And I will look at that and give you feedback as well, as I haven't seen that yet. So I will definitely feedback good or with suggestions or anything, I will let you know. And
Okay.
I really appreciate you doing that, because it was really frustrating to go through all of that and realize that 3 tries and it was still erasing everything. So yeah. So then I just wanted to highlight, and this was just because it's one of the newest surveys. I don't know who Source America is, but they did a pretty detailed survey on employment inclusion, and they revealed a nationwide desire for employers to support people with disabilities. And it's an interesting survey in that it shows how people with disabilities feel when they are going through the employment process, either to be hired, through being employed by employers. And also it shows the view of people and how they believe that the government, in part, because it's a comprehensive survey, so private and public sector should be supporting people with disabilities to be hired and to maintain employment. And so I included that in our packet. It's just an employment inclusion survey, and it's just an interesting source of support for more inclusive practices and within the culture of employment overall nationwide. And so it says, importantly, 93% of respondents desire the private sector and government to take a more active role in supporting employment opportunities for people with disabilities. So that is, you know, a pretty decent percentage. But yeah, so I just included that in here for information. And like I said, I referred to the state website for guidance on things that the city could include for information and resources on the city website. A lot of it, most of it, like some of it is videos, some of it is images and screenshots, but a lot of it really is just text information. And so even with the text information, it at least helps and guides the process so that you know what to expect. And then this was just an interesting disability inclusion pledge that is from the Disability and Philanthropy Forum. And what's interesting about this pledge is it's meant for nonprofits, predominantly for philanthropy, but it goes through, things to think about when you're doing inclusive employment practices, that you have disability community engagement, disability inclusive language, accessible events, inclusion audits and plans, staff training and participation, board training and participation, disability grant making. It's just things that the city can think of while they're, and also measuring and reporting that includes disability. So it's just things to think about, in the overall culture of including disability in the citywide practices. It's not really necessarily, only for philanthropy. And then this handout has been around for a while. It's building an inclusive workforce, and this was on the ODEP website. I can send it to you. It's been around for at least 10 years. You've probably seen it, but it has a lot of resources listed on it as well. And so I don't know, Eli, do you want to add anything?
No, that's pretty comprehensive. And there's a lot of resources on state personnel within the state to create multiple channels of candidates in the disability community. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And then really thinking about that inclusive hiring process and how do you make sure that, practical things like job descriptions, structured interviews, diverse interview panels, skill-based assessments, what people's abilities are as opposed to their disabilities, focusing on things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity. And it's a struggle. Like I think pretty much every human resource agency is challenged right now, particularly in government, with finding good candidates. So that on top of having to compete in a post-COVID employment market where a lot of folks would like to work from home full time, or at least have that hybrid option. And I know the city does have that, but it does make it a bit more competitive now. So like Catherine was saying, there's a lot of resources out there in the state. I wish there were more actually in the state, but there are a lot federally as well. ADA National Network, they do a pretty good job, and the state affiliate, our regional affiliate, Southwest ADA Center, Julie Ballinger, is a really great resource. She can do trainings specifically on employment and disability. She's been doing this for many, many years, and she knows the state really well. So instead of sometimes bringing in a national expert who may have that national understanding of issues, they're not going to know those specific issues to the state. That's why I like to bring in folks who are from here to really talk about those national best practices, but to have the local input as well. So Julie Ballinger, she's a good friend of mine, and I think most people on the committee know her. So if you don't have her contact, we'll be happy to share that with you all. And it's free.
Yes, if I was just going to ask if you could send me her contact information.
Yeah, absolutely. And she is wonderful. I've attended 2 different kinds of trainings with her, and she's very thorough and helpful. So she will gear the training towards your needs. She's wonderful. So I think that's it for a very brief presentation. Gina Marie, you have something to add?
Yeah, I think it's really important that employers realize that there is a national agency that deals with issues. If you can't find a technology answer or something that you need for an employee, it's called JAN, Job Accommodation Network .com.org.
If you just search Jan, you'll find
Yeah,
it.
Job
Go ahead, Robin.
Accommodation Network will get you there, definitely. And they have dozens of like counselors. It's almost like, okay, what do you need? What does it work? What is the employee like? And it's like an interactive process where they're really going to search and find the answer. They're amazing. Thank you.
Robin, go ahead.
I was just going to say earlier, Kathleen, you mentioned that a lot of people are afraid to become employed or have issues with becoming employed because they don't want to lose their Medicaid. And I just became aware of a program through Medicaid that allows you to keep your Medicaid even though you have a job that puts you over the actual financial limit. And I don't remember what the name of that is, but if you will look up Willing to Work, it's a group that's trying to work on changing the criteria so that more people with disabilities are eligible for this program. So that's something to just pass along.
Yeah, I know that one of the issues with Medicaid is that I think the current, if I remember right, the current resource limit is $10,000. And so you're not even able to save for something like an accessible vehicle or medical expenses and things like that that are not covered by Medicaid.
But
And
this
so
is,
yeah.
oh, sorry.
That's okay. So they're trying to, I know that I've been trying to follow Willing to Work. It's kind of hard to follow them because they're not
Right.
completely organized yet. But I've noticed that they are trying to address that issue so that people can have Medicaid basically based on disability status rather than
Mhm.
on resources and poverty. And so which is kind of the current model is that you get it because you're low income and you don't have resources. And so yeah, it's a very exciting thing. If I'll look it up, but I don't know who's running that yet, and I haven't had a chance to reach out because I saw it about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so it's Michael Murphy he's an attorney that used to work here and he's working with the group. And to my understanding, he did a presentation for DRNM. And to my understanding, through this program that Medicaid doesn't tell people about, I think the current standard is you can make up to 50,000 and still receive benefits for wheelchairs and modified vehicles or whatever. I'm not sure how Medicaid covers modified vehicles, but yeah, you can, I think the current standard is 50,000 under this program, but you have to ask for the program. And then that I do not recall what the name of it is.
Okay.
But it is definitely reach out to Michael. He's very well versed in this and can tell you guys a lot about it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I will look into that and we can do a presentation on that as well. When I get the information, whatever that is. Thank you, Robin. I really appreciate that. So Bernadette and Christina, I don't want to keep you unless you want to stay. I would love for you to stay. But I know you're busy. So I really, really appreciate you being here though and reaching out and supporting us to make this process more just accessible overall for everyone, not just people with disabilities. I know everyone is experiencing what I experienced. So thank you both, and I will definitely be in touch. So
Yes, thanks again for having us, and we're happy to hear any feedback, Chairperson Gish, if you go back to our website, and then we're happy to give any updates. We have to work with the vendor to help us with the technology side of our platform, but in a few months we can give an update on where we're at with that. And then with some of the resources that you all provided today, get some things in place before that.
thank you so much.
And
Okay.
Chair Gish, Ms. Salazar, real quick before you leave, let me know how I can help. There's something called voluntary product accessibility templates, VPATs, and those are used by the federal government to make sure that software is accessible. So if you're thinking about upgrading to a new platform, there's lots of resources out there. Go to 508.gov when you're looking at how to make sure that the vendor that's providing you with the software and the tools and the platform is accessible, that's just another great resource.
Okay, thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. So next is a meet and greet with Daniel Lopez. I don't know if you got your Zoom updated yet. I know you said in the chat that it was updating. If not, that's okay. We can meet you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you could hear me.
Yeah.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm finally online. I had to get creative and use my iPad because the connectivity at this building was pretty low. But here I am.
Yay. So I think, let's see, we have a little over an hour. So I think we could just go around for the mayor's committee members here. We have 3 who are not here. And just say your name and a little bit about yourself, maybe a sentence or 2. You don't have to say anything. And then Daniel, you can introduce yourself a little bit longer. I think give a little bit more
Okay.
background as to who you are. I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
So I will
So-
start. Okay. I'm the chair. My name is Kathleen Gish, and I've been the chair since, when was it? 2020? 21? It's been a while.
Is it 20? I thought it was 20, 21.
I always see Aurora as the chair too. It doesn't feel that long ago.
No, it doesn't.
And I've been involved with the city with volunteering since 2006. I first started with the library, and then on and off I was an intern under the ADA coordinator, David Chapman, for 1 semester. And there was a city program where the city actually paid for internships. It was very cool. So I got to do that, and I got to fix the city website, which I was very excited to do because it was not ADA compliant, and I helped to make it ADA compliant, or at least more so. And I have since then been involved with the mayor's committee, and that was 2014 when that happened. So it's been a long time since I've been here with the mayor's committee. I officially joined in 2017. And so I've also done other forms of disability advocacy around the state and the city, and as well as through education, because that was quite a process. So I think, let's see, Eli, go ahead.
Oh, well, 2 things before I go to a little bit of my background, but I just put in the chat, I Googled willing to work New Mexico, and just for folks, it's to improve New Mexico's Working Disabled Individuals Program, WDI, supporting working people with disabilities to reach their full potential and capacity, mobilize voices and stories. And I found that on Mr. Murphy's LinkedIn page, and I'd heard about this, but I think it's a great opportunity. We should reach out and see. It doesn't look like they have a website up yet or anything on that. So very new, but very exciting. And I want to thank DRNM Robin for bringing that to our attention. Thank you. A little bit about me. I'm from Santa Fe, but left after college and went to law school in New York. Had the opportunity to work in homeless services for the city right out of law school. Then I worked at the New York State Division of Human Rights, doing civil rights investigations and litigation. And while I was there, I kind of met my Yoda, the director of disability, and he taught me a lot. And I was really excited to work on issues in disability and fair housing, but also in ADA Title II and Title III in particular. Then I worked at New York City Emergency Management as the first ADA coordinator. We were dealing with the Brooklyn Center for the Independence of the Disabled settlement, which was huge and really interesting, looking at how to improve emergency services for people with disabilities. Then I was counsel at the mayor's office for people with disabilities in New York City as well. Currently, I work at the Attorney General's office in their new Office of Civil Rights. Really exciting. We literally just started last month. So it's a big opportunity to do civil rights and disability rights here in New Mexico. And I had the opportunity to meet Daniel during the interview process, and we are delighted, thankful, and just looking so forward to working with you. We've been without an ADA coordinator for, God, I want to say
16 months. I counted. It was
okay.
16 months.
I was going with 2 years, but maybe it wasn't that long.
Almost.
Yeah, yeah. And so we, you know, Kathleen and I and everyone here really pushed for the ADA coordinator to be important for the city. There was a moment, I think, where they had sort of even abandoned the position, and no fault of the city. It's just, it was COVID. It was lots of things were going on, but they ramped up, and in my opinion, they did a national search. They found somebody who's going to be fantastic. And I'm just really excited and really proud of our city for what it's done. It's taken a while, but I get it. I work in government. I know it takes a while, but it's getting done. So welcome. We're really excited to have your expertise and support. And let's get to work and make this the most accessible city in the nation.
Thank you, Eli. Aurora?
Yes, I fortuitously stepped down from being chair early 2020, right before the pandemic. And I'm so grateful because I think you guys have done such a great job. You've pushed us in new directions and tried new things, and we're just moving along so far. Came to be disabled by having a series of immune system problems because I lived in a black mold infested apartment in Washington, DC. And first my asthma was bad, and then I was kind of getting better with that. And then I got neurological problems. My MS started. I have a spinal cord injury. Then I got cancer. So all in all, don't live with black mold. Not good. But I love living in Santa Fe, and I've been here almost 20 years, and I've been affiliated, I guess, with the Mayor's Committee since about 2014. When I came on board, there was a chair and a vice chair. And the chair was planning to leave. We already knew that. And the vice chair was going to take over. And then he decided to move to Peru. And then our beloved Charles was also going to move, but he suddenly died. And then suddenly I was chair. And I had only been on the committee about 2 or 3 months. So anyway, I'm like I said, very grateful that we have a wonderful leadership team. And I'm very grateful that we're going to have an ADA coordinator with some teeth and real, not somebody who has to, carry 50 pounds and climb 40 feet, So anyway, yay, Daniel.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were working on the description of the ADA coordinator job position because the original position literally said that you needed to lift 100 pounds and work in all conditions. And we were like, that is not possible. So I was wondering if it even complied with OSHA. It was pretty amazing that that was in there. So let's see who hasn't gone yet. Kendra.
Hi, Daniel. I had the pleasure of meeting you during the interview process. So nice to see you again. So of course, my name is Kendra Garcia. I am a person that has lived and was born and raised here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Have multiple disabilities. I currently work as an independent living advocate for New Vistas, which is what we call a Center for Independent Living. And we promote the independent living philosophy. And as well as I'm actually now on the State Rehab Council board. So I'm also on that as of this past month. And then I worked with homeless youth, and yeah, my background is in social work. So that's pretty much where this has led me. And I'm so happy to have you, and I look forward to working with you.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting about this committee is that there are several of us who are social workers in the, on this committee. So,
Mhm.
That is
Angelique, Angelique, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Angelique. I'm just a mom of 2 children with special needs. And I don't say that lightly. They, they're my passion, of course, and they inspire me to be a doer in the city. Yeah, where there's a need, I try to meet that need. Where there's a gap, I try to fill that gap. And so it's going to be a pleasure working with you.
And Miriam, I'm assuming that you are on the phone call. If that's you, go ahead. If it's not,
And
Miriam,
I'm sure, I believe that's Regina.
oh, is that Regina?
Yeah.
Regina,
Okay,
okay. I think that that's all the committee members who are
okay.
here.
Well,
So go ahead, Daniel.
okay, lad, I'm next. And let me give you a little background on me. Well, since I was younger and growing up, I always volunteered. And as a Boy Scout, I helped with site conservation with the Lions Club. And as I moved into college, I joined Lions Club and became the youngest district chairman for site conservation, participated in the Journey for Site program, and I did that for the district in South Texas. Then there was a new law coming about called ADA. I started reading about it. I'm probably the only person who liked reading Federal Registry. And so I started reading it. I had the opportunity to meet Lex Frieden, who actually drafted the Americans with Disabilities Act and presented to George Bush in 1986, and then they had to modify it and re-presented it for passage in 1990. And that's where my training background came from Lex Frieden, independent research utilization, and DREDA that gave me my training. I, of course, met several people. Ron Mace was the one who developed the ADAG, the design work for rehab, the DUFAS designs for compliance and how you make things accessible. He did that under Easter Seals. Then I started helping students with disabilities. That's where I met my wife, drafting the bylaws for the first disability organization on campus at the university I was at, because there was some issues with compliance. So I started helping them with the specifics on that. Became known as an advocate and a rebel rouser and whatnot. And at the end of the day, we filed a lawsuit and we won several concessions to be made to make it all accessible. Next, you know, the city of Brownsville, Texas is having problems with litigation on HR and architectural barriers, and they asked me to help them, so I did. And they asked me to be their first ADA coordinator. And I was the first ADA coordinator in South Texas, the whole region. Then, of course, my hometown, El Paso, Texas, where I'm from, stole me from Brownsville, and I became their ADA coordinator and assisted them with compliance. After that, I chose to go on my own in private practice and assist more cities and more entities with compliance. I became the first registered accessibility specialist in the state of Texas for the El Paso area. I would have been the first one in Texas, but I turned in my application 2 weeks later because I was kind of busy with projects. Otherwise, I would have been RAS number 1 instead of RAS number 44. And I've been doing that for about that specific license for 23 years. And prior to that, I was an independent contractor for the state of Texas, helping them out. And I've also done consulting work with the military on accessible housing, ensuring compliance with that. And anytime someone gets in trouble, they tend to call me and say, hey, we heard that you're the one that can help us find the solution. And I usually can help them do that, especially if they're in federal court or something of that nature. We work on a mediation or a form of resolution that will be acceptable to all parties if we do that. And then a couple of years afterwards, I got a call from the mayor of Philadelphia. He's trying to convince me to come on board and help them with their problem because they were facing some legal concerns and they've been sued prior. And so I finally had to accept an offer because he threw me an offer that I couldn't refuse. So I went to Philadelphia to assist them. I was part of the mayor's office and also of the diversity inclusion portion of the city, helping them with that. I got to learn about how they implement those programs and how I felt they could be improved by including people with disabilities, especially in the employment components, both private and government sector, because through the business component, the city does influence the hiring practice in the private sector through promoting its city to bring in industry. And so I thought we could do better by requiring them to hire more people with disabilities and providing them input on how to do so. But before I could do all that, I had to resign because my father was passing away with cancer and he was alone. So I chose to come back to El Paso and continue my personal private practice. Next thing you know, I'm being approached by Santa Fe if I would be interested in helping them. And my wife loves Santa Fe. We would come every year for various events. And as tourists, we saw Santa Fe in a different way. And accessibility, I had some concerns, but I had to bite my tongue because my wife says, we're on vacation, don't work. So that's what I would do. I would have to bite my tongue. So you know how it is when you're an advocate, you see everything and want to say everything. But now that I'm in the government, I will not bite my tongue and I will assist Regina and all parties interested in success to find the positive approach to enhance the integration of people with disabilities overall. I know that we can do it. It's vital for the economic development of Santa Fe and its future, since we are the third most visited location in the country, maybe top 10 in the world. And the public is looking, and we want to be a shining example of compliance and accessibility. We can do better. We will do better. And with the opportunity to be part of the diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think we can give them that anchor to where compliance is no longer seen as an option. It's now a mandate, a requirement, and a positive. I look to the committee to giving me their honest input as to what are the deficiencies, and also to accept the reality that government is slow. Government will have its concerns, and we will have to choose the priorities together so that we can move forward, because each year is a step forward. And I know that Regina is going to give me the guidance on how the temperature and the waters are here in Santa Fe. And I'm familiar with all aspects of government from airport to zoo. I understand how things work in most governments. They're pretty much the same. And we can achieve a lot. So if anyone has any questions for me, I mean, I'm open. Oh, on a personal note, my wife, I don't mind sharing. I hope she don't kill me for it, but she's been married with me 30 years. We've been together more than 30 years. I met her in college. She had suffered a car accident in 1986 when she was 26 years old. 3 years after that, I met her in college. She was quadriplegic. We were friends. Next thing you know, we become more than friends. And now 30 plus years later, we're married. We've been married a long time. We've raised 2 kids. Our son is now 42 and daughter is about 40 years old. They each have their own lives and children. And it's been a positive life. And we enjoy everything about it. So she still likes me. She's trying to make me turn vegan, and I won't. So if she ever asks you what I had for lunch, tell her I had a piece of chicken. Don't tell her salad because she won't believe you. Okay.
Thank you, Daniel. I was thinking too, that was a really great introduction. I don't have any questions because all of my questions that I had were answered while we were interviewing you.
Madam
So-
Chair, I have a question for
Yeah,
Daniel.
go ahead, Eli.
Pretty
Sure.
serious. Yeah.
Okay.
Green chili, Colorado or New Mexico?
Oh,
Uh-oh.
hey,
There's
green
only one
chili
right
from
answer.
Hatch.
There's only one
Only
right
from
answer.
Hatch. Only from Hatch. I'm
All
sorry.
right.
We
Okay.
brought some from Hatch because that's where
Okay.
it comes from.
That's a good answer.
You passed. I was worried there for a second.
So
We
Regina,
drive the Hatch from El Paso.
Right. Regina, I was thinking, if you could give a really brief summary of what his position is now, because it changed. And I know you know, like, it even changed after we changed it. So if you could just give another brief update of what Daniel is going to be doing, that would be wonderful.
Thank you
lot.
so much, Madam Chair, and especially thanks to Daniel for his flexibility and patience in the process. I think the interview that you guys participated in was at least a couple of months ago, if not longer. Daniel's title is Equity and ADA Manager. It was actually upgraded during the process as the governing body is introducing a resolution to create an equity office. And that will include the ADA as well as other types of equity and accessibility for all members of our community of different races, of different religious persuasion, of different abilities. So Daniel graciously accepted the bigger job, which is entitled the Equity and ADA Manager. Since the resolution from the governing body creating the equity office has just been introduced and is still being discussed and determined how it will actually look, Daniel and I will focus directly on ADA. There's a lot of good work to do there. It'll be a primary focus. And then as this new office evolves, we'll work with the committee and the leadership at the city and evolve with it to include more accessibility for all kinds of people in our community.
Thank you so much, Regina, and it's very exciting. That was a very exciting change. You know, we were going all out with what with what we had, and then you went and took it to another level. So I really I'm very grateful for that, and I think that it's genuinely what needs to be happening in order to move the city forward, and also just it's partly, you know, in line with what's happening community-wide and nationally with, you know, intersectional disability plus
Correct.
race, gender, LGBTQI plus, all of that. And it's necessary at this point. So so thank you for taking the initiative to go above and beyond what even we had planned.
Thank
I will
you so much,
experience
Chair Gish.
growth.
And I just wanted to say that we really have to thank the mayor, who's completely committed as well to the support of this issue and broadening it as well. And I really want to thank the committee because it is so true what you said earlier, Chair Gish, was that your commitment to making it accessible for people of all various kinds of abilities makes it more accessible for everybody. And it's so important that that website, that portal for employment is not easy for anybody to navigate. And so your work is so generous and focused and really makes it better for every person in our community.
Thank you. So I don't know if anyone else has any questions. I know we're like getting to the point, and I know Regina, you had an item too, so I'm trying to like be mindful of yours so that we can have that discussion. So if there's no more questions, I know we can do a meet and greet as well. We can also meet independently to learn more about each other and you know, areas that we're more interested in than others or different things like that. So we will absolutely be meeting and discussing more. Regina, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Gish. That's exactly what I was thinking, especially on the first topic of the agenda today was employment. And you guys had all those beautiful resources. And I think that's a really big area that I know that Daniel's interested in and has a lot of expertise in. And so I would like to have an offline meeting with some of the folks here to really maybe make a work plan that we can start tackling some of that. So thank you so much. I was thinking the same thing, that we'll have some additional meetings to make an action plan.
Thank you so much, Regina. That's exciting. I have to say, I'm really excited. Okay, so the next item is item 7A. discussion, questions for city candidates, current city council candidates, and the November 7th, 2023 election. Eli, I don't know if you want to start the discussion, or I can, either way. However you want to do it.
I just missed that. What was it?
Okay, so the questions for city candidates,
Oh, yeah.
the current city council candidates in the November 7th, 2023 election. And the process was that I had asked everyone for disability related questions in order to submit to the city council candidates. And it's actually in line with our bylaws. And so I don't know if Eli, you wanted to discuss it. I can discuss it, or however you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah, so our plan is to have a volunteer / grassroots disability community event on the 19th at the main public library. That's going to be open to the public. We'll be sending out flyers and inviting candidates to come. We have it set up as more of a informal meet and greet sort of session where they can come in. We can talk about disability issues in the city, have an interactive process with the candidates. And then the plan is to give them a survey for them to fill out with Q&A that we've elicited from everyone. And Kathleen and I have to put that together. We have so many questions, right? So we got to work on getting a nice clear list of maybe less than a dozen questions or so to give them, and then give them a few days for them to fill out this survey / questionnaire and provide that to us. So that's the general run of the show that we plan for this. And again, we've been playing around with a lot of ideas, but because the city attorney has determined that this is outside of the authority and scope and would be improper for the mayor's committee to lead, we decided just to throw it out to the community and let the community from a grassroots level reach out to candidates and to facilitate that sort of informal discussion, but then have an actual survey questionnaire to give to the candidates for them to fill out so that we'll get their response to some of our more specific questions for the city. So that's the plan. It is going to be on the 19th at the main library.
Yeah, and I wanted to specifically thank you, Eli, for that. That's a really great summary. So we got something like 25 questions from all of the committee members, and it's on areas of housing, accessible and inclusive housing, accessible transportation, things like that, employment practices. And so the city attorney had replied to Eli stating, in short, and I included the email in this packet, but she says, with regards to the proposed candidate forum, the issue is that the committee is advisory to the city government and does not have a political role educating voters about candidates. None of the city advisory committees have that type of political voter education role. However, we actually do in our bylaws. We have, first I'm going to read the purpose of our committee. The purpose of the committee is to work with and for people with and without disabilities to ensure access for all by eliminating physical and attitudinal barriers, improving participation in the Santa Fe community for enrichment of all. And then item 5 of our duties and responsibilities says the committee shall assist the city in community outreach and education and staff training regarding issues of disabilities. And so the outreach and education aspect is part of why I was thinking to do this. And there's nothing that's limiting us. It says that the committee shall study issues of disability in regards to city programs, including but not limited to those in areas of housing, human rights, employment, recreation, and transportation. And the city shall advise the governing body of city programs providing services to persons with disabilities, including without limitation, those in the areas of housing, human rights, employment, recreation, transportation services, and access. And so all of our questions are around those issues. And so there was nothing, you know, we were going to be completely nonpartisan, completely non-biased. Every candidate would get the same amount of time to speak, to respond. And all we were doing was compiling their answers. We were not deciding candidates to vote for as a committee. We, you know, being completely objective on this. And part of it is that one of the issues that we've had is a complete disconnect between the city staff and city council. And that has led us to be placed under streets and drainage maintenance in 2017 and be rendered completely ineffective because we had no control or say in anything in the government, and how the government was working until we got a hold of Regina, and Regina finally listened. And without Regina listening, none of this would have happened with this committee, with the, you know, ADA changes, nothing. And so the other thing was that I did find, and it's very hard to find because if you look up anything to do with advisory boards, most advisory boards are not actually called advisory boards. They're called something else. But in Lafayette, Colorado, there is a youth advisory commission that advises the city in the same way. And they are also running very similar candidate questionnaires for their city, and the city is posting them on the website. And it seems to me like it's a means of engaging with the youth and awareness of youth issues and how they're, you know, and affecting their community. So that was why we did all this. But like I said, we can proceed, and the city attorney gave us the go ahead to proceed as citizens. We are private citizens. My understanding as well is that candidates, until they are elected, are also private citizens still. That may or may not be true according to city or state law. I don't know. But so that was why we did this, and it's incredibly important that anyone being elected, anyone being even hired, is aware of disability issues and needs that pertain to their job. And the city council is key to understanding disability issues and needs. And it wasn't so much to, you know, change an election or anything. I truly believe in everyone having their own vote and not being influenced or, you know, persuaded to vote for someone that they don't support. But it's to be educated and to be aware of how candidates stand. And it's also to educate the candidates to be aware of disability issues that are occurring in the city, that they need to be aware of those. And so anyway, that's a short rundown of it. I know that Daniel, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I had that same experience where our committee wanted to do the same thing in El Paso. And we were educated in the same fashion as that. It was not so much that they thought we were going to be a political entity or something of that nature. It's that the perception that an incumbent could be seen as utilizing city resources to their advantage against an opponent. And so acting on your First Amendment rights as citizens, separate of your roles of a committee, would be the best way possible. So and also as an employee. So during that time frame, I was able to work with our Independent Living Center to be the host of that kind of a forum, and then invite all various disability groups to come and attend and to provide their input as well. That way you have a holistic community involvement, and that's the best way to do it, because then you're not having anyone have more than their say, and everyone has an opportunity to give their input. And of course, you're at those forums, you're not trying to sway anyone. You're just trying to improve the education of a candidate so that they can understand that the seriousness of the issue is going to come before them in the future. So I think you're doing a great job. And I don't know if Vista is helping you or not. I don't know how that's working out. They're an independent living center in Santa Fe, if I'm not mistaken.
No, and I also reached out to, and I got to join in the process, Santa Fe County League of Women Voters.
All right.
And so, you know, that was one of the things was reaching out to them in the future, because I think that they are also a key organization here. And that they should be doing disability inclusive, like directly disability inclusive forums that are kind of a safe space where disabled people can come together to discuss disability issues that are occurring, where we may not feel safe bringing those issues up in a standard public forum, just due to the nature of disability needs and, you know, having it be medical and all of that. And so, yeah, so we're trying to figure that out, but we are going ahead as citizens and compiling those questions and doing it outside of this committee. And so, you know, we're trying to figure out the logistics of it all still, but no, we don't have any sort of an organization assisting us. So it's been one of the harder parts of it, is trying to figure out what to do. I found some great resources on how to hold, you know, nonpartisan, you know, questionnaire, you know, forums and things like that. But then we just decided to go with, you know, informal meet and greet because there's not that much time to really plan anything.
Correct.
You know, with like, we have like, what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? So it's all last minute. But so that's what's happening. And, you know, we have a year, or 2 years to plan for something, you know, more organized with, you know, nonprofits or whoever that are interested in supporting this kind of disability discussion in the community. And so, I mean, it's definitely needed. I can say that living here 20 years, it's definitely needed. But, you know, how it's going to happen, we don't know yet. So.
Well,
like-
as a citizen, I would be interested in attending. As a citizen, I would be interested in listening to the community and observing leadership and how they are looking at the issue.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Eli, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, there is a little bit of a gray area here, right? The actual text of the mayor's committee's authority, it doesn't prohibit, it doesn't inhibit, it doesn't you know, by definition, actually say what it can or can't do when it comes to an event like this. With that said, you know, the city has interpreted it in a certain way. But I think that gives us some opportunity for next cycle, thinking about 2024 and what collaborations might be more suitable for the city and the mayor's committee and working with community as well. So I just think as we mentioned, you know, we have 2 weeks in a day. So essentially this is a real, still an opportunity, but it's going to be grassroots. We're going to reach out to the community, and it's just going to be a place where we can speak openly with the candidates, share with them the concerns we have, but also the opportunity and investments, and then hear from them, see what their commitments are, see what their awareness is, and then share, like I said, that survey/questionnaire with them to get their input and feedback. So we literally just created the flyer the last couple of days. We'll be sending that out. I have to reach out to the candidates and offer them this opportunity to speak to the community. And I think we've been also talking about really the, you know, when we were talking about employment and that hidden talent pool, there's also a hidden pool of folks who in the disability community who could be voters. So it's also an opportunity for candidates to learn about ways of creating voter access, to talk about the unique needs of the community, and to try to get maybe even voters who have been disenfranchised at the table and in those voting booths in a nonpartisan way. So there's a lot of opportunity both to talk about the issues, but also to increase the ability and overall network of voters in the city. So I think there's just lots of opportunity here.
Yeah, thank you, Eli. And I've been thinking of that as well. You know, one of my first voting experiences here, I didn't know that at the time absentee ballots couldn't be dropped off at any location. That was how it always was, you know, where I had lived in Seattle. And when I came here, I just automatically took it to the rodeo grounds, and I was shocked to see that the ADA access door was to the side with a huge, like 4-inch doorstep to get in. The door was propped open by chairs that were, which the door was like extremely heavy, propped open by chairs, being held open by the chairs at all. And the path going to that area was all gravel, and it was not accessible in any way. The table for people who needed access to vote was literally where we were all standing in line. So they had no privacy. There was no barrier or anything to stop anyone from seeing their vote, like everyone else got. And I was horrified. I was so horrified that when I finally brought my ballot downtown to the county clerks, I voiced it, and the lady was extremely rude in her response and just said, well, you have a lot to complain about, don't you? And I said, yeah, I do. You know, this is unacceptable. And she just like basically rolled her eyes at me and didn't listen and didn't care. And so that was one of my first voting experiences in Santa Fe. And I knew that that is not how, you know, accessible voting works and how it should be. And so I've always had this in my head that, you know, this is an extremely important act of, you know, giving accessible voting is an extremely important act of inclusion and being part of this democracy and part of this government and having a say and a voice. And so we need to make sure that everything here is accessible and inclusive and clear. And yeah, and so I see, Daniel, you have your hand up, and then Angelique, go ahead.
Oh, hang on. Well, yeah, I mean, in Texas, one of my first opportunities was when we filed a lawsuit for voter rights access when I was living in South Texas. And then I moved to El Paso, and next thing you know, I'm having to run and hide because they were trying to serve me because they were suing El Paso as to be the what would you call it, the defendant on voter access. And I had to explain to Jim Harrington, who was a civil rights attorney handling it, that I'm now working for the city of El Paso and I'm no longer part of the other side, the plaintiffs. And so at the end of the day, I had to recuse myself as a witness and so forth. But at the end of the day, we got some changes because a lot of architectural barriers exist at fire stations and things of that nature. So when selecting sites, the ADA coordinator is responsible in ensuring that those activities comply from the beginning. And then also the county is required to ensure that they comply because you're spending federal city funds and county funds on the elections. And those are dollars that people with disabilities pay into the coffers. And so it is their right to access votes. And absentee voting is an option, but it isn't the only choice. It is the choice of the individual to show up like every citizen, not segregated, and to participate in their right to exercise their right to vote and cast their secret ballot. And that's our constitutional right. So people like you advocating and others, it is essential and you shouldn't stop.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments? Angelique, you had your hand up. If you don't.
I think what candidates need to remember is that over 54 million Americans have at least one disability. And we're not even including like their parents or their advocates or whatever. This is the largest minority group in the country, and those votes matter. So when those candidates realize what an impact that this minority group can have, maybe they'll listen. That's all I have to say. As a mom, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
And
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, and I don't see Robin on,
No, I
but
don't either.
yeah, the Disability Rights New Mexico has done a lot of work in voter access and accommodations, information, trainings. New Mexico actually was a part of a number of DOJ settlements a few years ago when it came to voter rights for people with disabilities. So the state isn't exactly, it's not exactly new to the state. And Disability Rights New Mexico is a good source of information and collaboration. And Santa Fe County, I think, has done probably better than some of the other places throughout the state. Not to say that there aren't huge problems. And I know that they've actually, Disability Rights New Mexico presented last year to us on some of the initiatives that they were doing. So there's a lot of local resources. And I think it's, just continuing to move forward and push for greater access.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So the next item is just an update on the ADA emergency kits and the urgent needs for training in the city of Santa Fe and emergency planning. Brian Williams made a statement that he has received updated translation pads from the vendor, and so they can schedule a group demo soon. And so I'm looking forward to that process starting. We know that there are still issues that were identified recently as far as leaving the city, like evacuating the city. There are not very many ways out, through freeways, and even one little accident on a freeway will completely render it like unusable. The traffic will just crawl. And so we know that this is an issue. And so hopefully between the ADA emergency kits and also the emergency planning that's taking place, we can hopefully start working on this in future meetings. So that's my update for that. The discussion and plan to implement inclusive city meetings, accommodations process, Zoom hybrid meetings, ASL cart, languages loop system in city buildings, and the ongoing need to correct and update community access. That's been put on hold until November because we need to be able to plan for what to tell the city council and to present to them. And Pam isn't here. Pam is coming back soon, but we need her to be part of it as well. And so we're just putting that off on hold till November. Item 8A, accessible elections information and accessibility assistance to vote. In the packet, we already discussed this a little bit, but in the packet, I included the Facebook page item that they posted from Disability Rights New Mexico, celebrates National Disability Voting Right Week at the New Mexico Technology Assistance Program annual conference, and they included the pictures that they had on their Facebook post. And it includes important information to contact the county clerk, to, how to get an absentee ballot if you're visually impaired, using an absentee ballot, in-person accessible voting machines, which are now available at every polling site across the state, it says, which is a huge improvement, and in person with voting with or without assistance. And so Disability Rights New Mexico, like we said, is championing this. And so it's in the packet, there's information available. And I also linked the Facebook page if anyone wants to access that specific post. Eli, go ahead.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would say in my experience, when it comes to voting access, there's that physical and technology piece to it for accessible voting machines and the location. But what's a really huge one is training. It's making sure that a largely volunteer workforce has some awareness training, and then making sure that you have a higher level of training for like supervisors or coordinators. So just something that comes to mind. New York City went through a series of litigations when it came to their polling places. They were using largely schools, which are also being used as emergency shelters that were inaccessible. And then the schools were then inaccessible. So they actually had to set up an office of accessibility within their public education department to work on it. So then the other thing, just to go back on emergency management, and I don't know if I've actually gotten clarity of whether the city has an emergency management plan. Whether it's a communication, evacuation, shelter, mass care plan, that'd be a good starting place when we want to look at access and functional needs issues. There's a different schools of thought, whether it's get the plan and then update the plan based on access needs or bake the access needs and disability needs within it. But I think it's really important. It makes me think of the Maui wildfires, the fires that we had recently, both this season, but in particular last. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, given with climate change, it's not a matter of if, but when the city is going to have to deal with fires and floods and catastrophic climate change. And we've mentioned this a number of times, that people with disabilities and other vulnerable communities are more impacted than others. You know, if you have a credit card and a good car, you can get things done pretty quickly, and you're, by and large, not always, but you have a better chance of making it out. But that's not true for people in the disability community at large. So I think it's really important for us to find out what the plans are for the city, and then add in the features of access and functional needs within that plan. And we've said this many times, it makes the plan better for everyone, right? By infusing the access concerns that we have, it's going to make for a better plan. So anyway.
Thank you, Eli.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Regina.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thanks for that, Eli. I just wanted everyone to know that there is an emergency response plan, or a city emergency plan, and so I think I can get that for us. But I thought that someone had shared with me that there's a best practice of like a community engaged emergency planning process as well. It reminds me that this is probably an important time for me to tell you guys that that Brian Williams, our emergency manager, is not well. And I think he's probably not able to work full time. But I will see if the assistant in his office, who I think is owning the plan right now, might be able to work with us, and Daniel and I can get it on our, sort of as we develop our priority action plans, and we can sort of prioritize this somewhere, because a lot of people have requests, not just this group. People that live on Canyon Road are concerned that there isn't an evacuation plan. We have a new engineer in Public Works who is a genius with signals, and he says that he can implement an evacuation program from remotely, so that we could actually design something so that it turns all the lights green and all the lights red to get us all out of town fast. And and then the head of the department that's over fire and emergency management and police said that there are shelter in place recommendations now for many, many types of people in many different places. And so all of that new thinking and that additional work, I think, really needs to be incorporated. And so I can get the plan for the group, and then Daniel and I can also put it on the work plan about how we can sort of at least schedule the time in the future when we'll incorporate this new thinking and involve new peoples of the community, and update it to serve more people better.
Yeah, thank you so much, Regina. Daniel, go ahead.
Yes, and also we can look at the opportunities of shelter in place is an option, but then maybe we need to evacuate, and then transportation becomes the obstacle. Being that we have buses that have ramps and access, maybe we can look at what is the action plan in the event that we have to evacuate with the use of city vehicles. And that's where Regina and I can talk about those strategies and see if we can create a registration of people with disabilities. Of course, confidentiality will be upheld, that want to participate in that possible evacuation. So that way we know what their particular disability is and their needs and the number of people, so that we can get them safely to another location. And what's that going to look like needs to be identifiable based on who's going to be on that list. So we did that in El Paso when we had some concerns also, and that was done. We'll see if we can do that here.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Yeah, we've said it in prior meetings that a lot of people with disabilities don't have anybody. Yeah, they don't have family or friends or anyone who can really help them. They may have a caregiver, but who knows if that caregiver is available. So Angelique, go ahead.
Eli, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there was legislation that was passed recently for a registration or a register for people with disabilities, and it'll be like a you know, you don't have to sign it, I guess, but it'll at least let them know who's where, what their disability is, what's going on. Do we know? Does anybody else?
No, I have not heard of any of that legislation. Do you know if it's state, federal, local?
Let me look up my notes really quick on the governor's commission and then I'll get back
Yeah.
to you, but I know that they're talking about that right now.
Angelique, I
um,
remember reading about that, but I don't remember the details either. If I'm
Yeah.
gonna say off the top of my head, I think it was state, but I don't remember.
Oh,
At our
fascinating.
last commission meeting, we were talking about that and they were saying like a lot of people might hold back because they don't want others to know about their disabilities.
Oh, yeah.
I think when it comes down to safety, awareness and just being prepared, I think it's something to at least look into, you know, but I'm positive we were talking about that at the last commission meeting.
Yeah, Angelique, if you could, even if you can't get it back to us in this meeting, no rush. But we can include that in a future conversation on this since it's an ongoing conversation. That would be really great.
Yeah, my experience has been that voluntary registries are not that helpful. I'm open though to changing my mind, and it really depends on the community and even at the neighborhood level. Some of the concerns are stigma and fears of data security and sharing information. Also, in New York City, when this came up, there was a lot of concerns about inaccurate or outdated information or incomplete information and creating misunderstandings within the disability community or over-reliance that someone's going to come save you if you put information in. There was a series of incidents I forgot which, some hurricane it was, it may have been Harvey, where people didn't evacuate because they said, we're on the registry, we're waiting. And they had to be evacuated right before they were in serious trouble. So I have my sort of upbringing in emergency management has been to largely push back against global voluntary registries, but that at the local level, they may be really useful. For example, letting your local fire department know that there is people with disabilities in your home, stickers, other kinds of information at the local level. But when it gets broader, it gets less helpful and sometimes I think can be a disadvantage or cause misunderstandings. Really, in disasters, it really comes down to personal preparedness as well, which is really hard for folks in vulnerable communities, poor, homeless, disability communities. So how do we share information so that people can make the right choices and know when? How do we communicate? That's huge. How do we communicate? So I don't know. I have some reservations with the concept of voluntary registries, but like I said, I'm open to changing my mind, and I think there's lots of different ways of helping people in the community understand how to prepare, plan, and how to evacuate or other kinds of means during disasters. So it's a complex issue.
So thank you everyone for that. And I know we will be working on this ongoing, so I'm not in too much of a hurry to include absolutely everything in this meeting. So the next item is 8B, updates on vacant mayor's committee position. So the city clerk resigned at the end of September, and I don't know if it's still true that the posting, so we were sending it to the governing body, but is it Erica was saying that it wouldn't be presented to the governing body until October 11th. Is that still true, Regina?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Yes, I think that even though the city clerk has resigned and some things are a little bit difficult and slow now, I think it seems that there is someone in the city clerk's office very efficiently handling this. They have the recommendation of the mayor's committee, and I do expect that it'll be on the October 11th agenda, and I will check on that because that's the very next governing body meeting, and that agenda has to be finalized and published Friday. So I'll check on that. If we miss that one, there should be another meeting in 2 weeks. But
Okay.
I think we're close.
And I just want to say that I noticed that in the paper that the city appointed Geraldine, is it Cardenas? Yeah. Who has been the assistant city clerk, and who has actually been the one who has been emailing all of us and assisting with everything. So, so I was actually kind of happy to see that, you know, she's been the one doing it this whole time anyway. So, you know, she knows the ropes and knows what to do. So fingers crossed that goes smoothly. So 8C, continued discussion of updates on the city website. The city website features and accessibility. Daniel, I just wanted to say, since you're here, one of the things that we have been wanting to do for several years now is update the Mayor's Committee website pages and update what I had posted in 2014, because it has not been updated since 2014. And of course, a lot of things have changed culturally, you know, etiquette, all of that. So there's also more information that could be posted. So we can work together with you to decide what we want posted and then what needs to be posted and how to make the information more efficient. Because I posted what I could at the time, and I know that it really does need to be updated. It's been a long time. So
Yes,
so
and
that
then we
was-
could also, we could talk about the overall, what do we want to see as far as access on website material?
Yeah.
And what is the outline that we want to present? And I want to know from the committee, what is the preference, and then we'll go from there. I mean, but we need to sit down and hopefully in person to discuss some of
Yeah.
these things and see
Yeah.
where we're at.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, so that's just, you know, heads up. That's what we're planning to do soon, because it's been
Gotta do it.
literally years. And, you know, in addition to the job info that Bernadette Salazar had discussed, and there's different things to fix on the website, but for our Mayor's Committee pages and stuff, we absolutely want to update those pages to be more clear. And then, so the next is 8D, subcommittee reports. Are there any subcommittee reports? No, okay.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just on the emergency management end, and you had already mentioned that from Brian about getting those kits together. And I was just searching, I was fascinated by this voluntary registry. I do see a bill that was chaptered, which meant that it didn't get through the committee, and it had to do with creating what it's called a non-traditional communication or disability registry. And it's through the DMV, but it doesn't look like it made it through. I could be wrong. Maybe there was another bill on the Senate side that went through, but that might be what came up. But yeah, I'll keep looking, and Angelique, if you find something, let me know. I'm fascinated by that. The other thing is, I do think we, and maybe it's setting up a special session or or a subcommittee. I hate creating more subcommittees, but I think we do have a good conversation about the website and accessibility, especially with the impending notice of rulemaking from the Department of Justice for state and locals. Our website, you know, when you look at it on a spectrum, it's more accessible. It's than a lot of other websites we've seen in the government. But there's a lot more work to be done. So I know we keep talking about this, but we might want to just set up a meeting now that Daniel's on board to talk about both the substance of the website when it comes to disability, but also the access and the voluntary content accessibility guidelines, WCAG, and how we can make it more compliant and move us away from the overlay that we currently have, which we've also been talking about quite a bit. So I think maybe a meeting or two on that would be really helpful.
Yes.
Thank you, Eli. So next is matters from the staff. Regina, it says request for MCD support on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, request for city funding of staff with regard to pedestrian bike lane improvements. And I want to say that Pam was extremely excited to give feedback, but she's not here yet. So she said that she'll be back in about a week or so So I don't know if she can get back to you then, Regina, but I know she wants to give feedback on this. So go ahead and Regina, go ahead and present on this.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. The Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the city's Metropolitan Planning Organization and a number of the team members from Public Works worked together for months to develop a resolution that Councillor Michael Garcia is introducing. He hasn't introduced it yet, but he will. That directs the city to fund and staff enough people to actually maintain bicycle paths, sidewalks, and trails in fully functional condition at all times. So that means enough staff to plow, enough staff to de-ice, enough staff to street sweep, and this is staff and equipment, of course, enough staff to repair. It wouldn't happen instantly, obviously, but so we got together as a cross-functional team in Public Works and identified what it would take to do that consistently for our community. And it's not an insignificant investment, but I think it's a reasonable investment for the return on investment. It's about $2 million a year and $2 million initial investment, something like that. I think it's in your packet. So I just wanted the committee to be aware, because it seemed to me that that is an area where the committee does find the city to not really meet the needs of the community with disabilities. And a huge opportunity to get on board with the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the Metropolitan Planning Organization to really focus on the importance of this kind of maintenance and investment in our community, and investment to multimodal transportation, which is a huge sustainability issue as well as an accessibility issue. It really is saying, you know, you don't have to have a car to have a productive and economically viable life in New Mexico, in Santa Fe. It's also really important to remember that children and elderly don't drive. And so we disenfranchise, you know, right off the bat, a huge part of our community without tending to these features. And it would take us a little while, but our envisionment is that there would be, you know, crews assigned to move around these facilities on a regular basis, report problems. We would budget for repairs and improvements. We would buy sweepers so that instead of just having one sweeper go down a road, you'd actually have two, and one would be getting the bike lane while one got the vehicle travel lane. And so the Public Works team really felt like this was a viable thing to do with the right staff and equipment. And we'd be excited to have the Mayor's Committee on Disability support it as well.
Feedback, Daniel, go ahead.
Yes, and I'm not sure if the funding sources are going to include community development block grants. That could also be tapped. Since it's an accessibility issue, those tend to be automatically approved for that type of endeavor. If it includes access to those kinds of items. So I would recommend that we look at that funding source as well. We did that in other places and it worked.
Would you build upon the PROW information, or, I mean, they've got all the sidewalks and all that, and kind of prioritize too by which is worse and what's hardest, and you're actually going to have money that you can use on sidewalks like downtown?
Thank you so much for that question. If I might, Madam Chair, respond. It would be, this is actually more thinking in the maintenance area. We were, you know, particularly one of the things to note is that the maintenance of our sidewalks is the responsibility of the property owner adjacent to the sidewalk. So it would be a big enforcement action. And right now it's an extremely slow and spotty enforcement action. But I think you're right. I think that's a great point that you bring up, Aurora, that sort of bringing in the updated right-of-way accessibility plan and what investments we need to make there, you know. I think we'd be joining an excellent team who studied this deeply about what are the primary you know, routes that we, you know, if we could make primary routes that could get people from here to there accessible and then go, you know, branch out from that, it makes it a manageable scope of work, right? So thank you for bringing that up. We should definitely bring that into the conversation and see how that dovetails.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, when I think of these access issues, I think of, you know, people being impeded from accessing food and medicine and resources and being part of the community and accessing transportation and employment and all of these things just because they literally physically can't get down the sidewalk safely. I've seen people still, I'm seeing people using their wheelchairs in the road and cars having to drive around them, and luckily they are, because it's just not safe to use the sidewalks because you're still covered in weeds, or when it snows, it gets really bad and really icy in a lot of places. And it's actually safer to walk in the road or to go in the road than it is to be on the sidewalk, because the snow plows go and put the snow onto the sidewalk, which makes, it's never made any sense to me. And so this is obviously really important for access and inclusion just in general for everyone, but especially for people with disabilities. And yeah, how do you want, do we have to hold a vote to support this? How do you want us to express that support?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it would be ideal if we had a letter from the Mayor's Committee that we could put in the packet with the resolution. It hasn't been introduced yet. So I think that'd be really powerful. And you have some time.
Okay. Yeah, I can get that done by the next meeting. And I will share that letter with everyone, the draft, in order to get feedback of what to include, all of your opinions and thoughts. And then we can include that draft to hold a vote and then submit it as a means of support. And we can also give feedback if we find something is lacking or not clear. I didn't feel like anything was lacking, but maybe someone else is noticing something that I don't. Eli, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, and this might be something within Daniel's wheelhouse, but and Aurora mentioned this, but the PROAG had just, it took them long enough. They just got the final guidance out there from the Access Board. So we might want to be thinking about how to incorporate that new guidance and existing guidance along with this initiative. So I think it's just like a double whammy of initiatives that works well with access concerns, and then for greater compliance, and also ways of really supporting our community with sidewalks and open access to areas and access to different parts of the community. So I just feel like it's a great example of how accessibility can really be utilized in different ways. So those new, I'll put it in the chat with the new PROAG guidelines.
Thank you, Eli. Regina, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had an idea that now that we have an awesome ADA coordinator, that maybe Daniel could draft the letter for your consideration and start taking some of the load off of the chairs. And certainly you could change it in any way, but for me, I find that working with the draft is just so powerful. You could put legal language in. And then thank you, Daniel, for bringing up the funding source, because none of us had any idea that there might be a funding source besides the general fund. So let's definitely take a look at that, and we can see how we can insert that into the process as well.
Yeah, and Regina, thank you. Yeah, Daniel, if you could get me that letter. So our meeting minutes and everything are due. I've been doing it the Wednesday before our meeting, but it's been being kind of delayed by the city clerk. So I'm thinking we might have to do it the Monday before our meeting, which is gonna be 9 days ahead of our meeting, just to deal with any edits or anything that needs to happen to the agenda, because that's been being stalled, and our last meeting minutes like barely got up by Friday in order to give it the 72 hours public notice. So I can email all of that to you of when to get it to me, but I'm just thinking like 9 days ahead of the next meeting. The next meeting is November 1st. So in
Wow.
the next couple of weeks. And it doesn't need to be a complete draft. We can work with a what I call a drafty draft. It just needs to have like, basic outlines of what to include in the letter, and then we can solidify it and put it together, and I'm happy to help.
Yes.
And so, just basic ideas down, and then we can put it into letter format. So. Are there any other comments on this? No, thank you so much, Regina. So then matters from staff, Helona. 9B.
Yes, the Zoom link will be provided in the meeting minutes.
Thank you so much. Matters from the committee? There are no matters from the committee. I just wanted to say, and I said this in an email to you all, but we need to decide on the time and place, time and day for the meetings for 2024. And so I haven't sent out an email requesting that information yet. I just gave you a heads up that I was going to be needing it. If I could have that in the next 2 weeks, though, that would be really helpful, because then I could put it all together and identify times that we are available. And that includes you, Regina, as well, if you have any open times that are standing, and Daniel, so that we can organize a meeting, and Helona, so that we can organize a meeting together, or at least try to. Last time was really hard. Go ahead, Regina. You're on mute.
Madam Chair, thank you so much. I just remembered it's time for us to prepare our next calendar year's meeting calendar as well. I don't know, was that what you were just talking about?
Yeah, so the
Okay.
mayor's committee meeting, what time and day we're going to meet for 2024.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, and hopefully Christopher will be able to attend. He's included in all of that. So I've been, trying to figure out how to make all this work. This time was even had to be fudged, like the times that were given, it was like off by an hour or two. And then Aurora was able to meet, and people were able to change some things on their schedules. So I'm hoping that can happen again. I know that we are having a really hard time, and it's always been hard to decide the time for the meetings. So, but fingers crossed. So that's all I have. Is there any other matters from the committee? No. Okay, so if there's nothing else to add, our next meeting is Wednesday, November 1st, 2023, from 3 to 5 on Zoom. And if there's nothing more, we are adjourned at 4:58 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Hi.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank
See
you to
you
the
on-
captioner. I think the captions were great today. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.